Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really exciting guest today. Her name is Laura Ordile. She's a hypnotist, a NLP practitioner, a mindset mentor, astrologer, and et cetera, et cetera. I can't wait to dive in. We're going to focus more on astrology today, though, because that topic fascinates me. Thank you so much for being here today, Laura.
Thanks for having me. I think astrology is going to be a fun discussion, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I have been into astrology for years, never quite landed with me as far as being able to do much with it because it's like a giant math problem. I don't think many people realize how complicated it is. So I really can't wait to ask questions and just learn more. But let's start first with, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and just kind of share what you do and who you are?
I call myself a mindset mentor, like you said, which kind of encompasses a little bit of everything because I went through, am I a coach? Am I this? Am I that? And I finally decided I'm a mentor. I'm someone who's probably been through what you've been through and found a better way than how I did it to get there. And so now I help people on their journey to be able to get to places quicker, easier, and usually more effectively and more completely. And I really love that process. It's important to me. I started out with being the intuitive side and kind of being a professional intuitive and added in astrology. I too, oh my gosh, you describe it perfectly because it is, to me, it was like, there would be no way I could ever get it. There's so much to it. It's so complicated. No way. But I was always fascinated by it. It was super fun to kind of know your sign or look up your horoscope. I had two older sisters, so I think they brought that into my life. And so I thought, oh goodness, all right. But then having it be out on the fringe the whole time as part of my life, just kind of being there and aware of it. The right teacher came at the right time, and she's amazing, and she chunked it down in a way that was like, okay, we start here, and once you kind of start flowing in that, then you move to the next thing and next thing. And before I knew it, it was like, oh my goodness, I can look at a chart and bring all this information in. And I do it not only through the structure of astrology, but through intuition as well. And I often use that as a starting point. I use astrology in the starting point of being that mentor with someone to kind of start the journey with them and bring that through. I decided at one point I needed to get a little more practical, have a little bit of a more practical skill, even though I use those really practically. I was just like, what's a real good balance? And people laugh, but I dove into hypnosis as my really practical thing to do. And so now I do a lot of the hypnosis stuff. But again, even a lot of times when I'm on that hypnosis journey with people, I bring in astrology because it helps people to really understand who they are and the energy that they came into this life to work with. And it helps you understand other people the way that I kind of dig in and explain it to you too, so that you can look and go, oh, okay, I understand why that person is the way they are. Or you get a feeling of, ooh, I bet they have a lot of this going on in their life or in their chart. And that's the energy you can really see flowing with someone. So that's me. That's a little bit about me.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, the power of knowing thyself, right? I think that that's really what we're here to do. We're here to learn more about ourselves so that way we can learn and understand others. It's amazing that you use it, incorporate it in all the other things that you do too. So it's kind of like your foundation in a lot of ways.
It is. And it's funny. The person I learned from is actually a psychologist. And she's, she was a psychologist for a long time, retired from that. But during the time that she was a psychologist, she used astrology in helping to work with the people that she worked with. And so, very science-based person, but stepped into that astrology at one point in her life and discovered that you can bring the practical and the woo together. You can join those things in a way that is going to be efficient and meaningful for people. And that's what I do. I love being that bridge that kind of brings the practical and the woo together in all kinds of ways.
Oh my God, I love that.
because it does feel like they're two separate things. Like you have the logical side, and you have the intuitive woo woo side, and it's like one or the other, right? But they're really two sides of the same coin. So one thing I've learned about science is there's so many scientists that are now starting to back up what a lot of intuitives have been saying, and they're the same. It's just one is more, I think one's for left brain and one's for right brain. Like that's it. It's just one, but they're the two sides of the same thing. I don't know. See, I'm also an intuitive, as I mentioned before we start this. I'm a tarot reader's channel, so I'm definitely more in the right brain side of things. But I also like the logic. I don't like to go in and immediately think that it is what it is just because someone says it is. I want to see some proof and evidence that backs it up, just to because I'm not just going to believe anything, right? And so I feel like, but I do feel like the right helps bring in more of the spiritual element. It helps bring in more of that like higher power. Like there's something else there that I can trust and lean on that, is bigger than me. And I think that that's kind of what that side brings. I don't know if that's what you've experienced, but I kind of feel like when you bring that into the practical, then you have like soul into it.
Yeah, well, and that's the interesting part. It's so funny because I watch people who say they don't believe in woo, or they're not in the woo, and it's about doing this and being practical, and they talk about certain things. It's like, that's very woo. You're just phrasing it differently, and it is, because the scientific world calls it energy, and the woo world might call it spirit or the universe or something like that. But it's the same thing that we're all kind of tapping into. All roads lead to Rome, and however you're getting there is it's basically the ultimate same goal for everyone, to be in connection with whatever is in our world, and how we connect to it is how we connect to it, and that's fine. Some people are very on the practical, let's get it done, let's do this side of things, and that's one thing that I love about astrology, is that I can really see when someone has certain things. In astrology, there's the four elements are a big foundation of it. We experience the four elements every day. We are in water, which is emotion. We're in air, which is communication. We're in earth, which is work and manifestation and being in our world, connected to it, and fire, movement, energy, talking, doing, all of those things. And some people more naturally lean in according to their chart and how they were brought into the world. They lean into something more than others, more easily than some of the other elements. What happens is oftentimes, especially from a young age, you might kind of get shut down or told that that part of you is too much. Maybe you're too emotional, and they say, you got to quit being so emotional. You got to realize we're in the real world. Or, maybe you're really kind of taking your time on things. You're slow and methodical about it, and you kind of like to have that luxury of time. And you're told, hurry up, hurry up. Well, all of those things are a part of who you're meant to be. And if I can come at some point in your life and say, well, look at this, look at the magic of who you are, and you're meant to bring that into this world and to lean into that energy in such a good way. And that, yeah, you might struggle with the emotional side of things because you have so much going on in that area. It might be really big for you, but here's how to work with that. Here's how to see the beauty of it and how to play that in your life in a way that serves you. And if you do find it on a difficult side, let me give you some ways to work with that, to bring it into the better side of things. Because the one thing about astrology and so many other things is that you kind of choose the energy you're leaning into in life. So if you come in with a lot of fire in your chart, you can choose to lean into the energy of, oh my gosh, I can light the way for so many others. I can ignite the charge in people, be the pioneer, be the warrior. Or you can lean into the spinning your wheels and being, that fiery, dramatic, too much of a person that has no control at all. Which one do you want to lean into? And I help people see the possibilities through astrology.
That's so interesting because you help them see their superpower so they can hone it instead of feeling like it's the thing that makes them unlikable or different, right? Like
Yes.
if you're too much. So for me, I'm a Cancer, and I've got a lot of water water in my chart. Also, my moon is in Cancer, very emotional. And growing up, I was always told I was too sensitive. I was over emotional. And I was always kind of ashamed of my emotions. But I've come to a point now, I mean, it's still a struggle because it's still like letting go of those old ideas that was given to me and for so many years of my life. But I've started coming to realize, no, my emotions are my superpower. It's my intuitive nature. It's how I connect with people. It's okay that I cry sometimes. And, I used to feel like crying was weakness. And I'm really like, no, that's just part of how I express myself. But it's helpful. That's why I was mentioning it's so good to know yourself, because it's helpful to know more about you. So now you can decide how you're going to show up in the world and not feel like you have to be ashamed of parts of you that are so prominent in you, if that makes sense.
That's exactly right. That's so key and so important.
Yeah. And so I have a couple questions because it sounds like, so what you do is really to show people like this is a lot of who you are and help people kind of find themselves. Do you ever use astrology? Like, what is your take on using it for like the prediction side of it? So a lot of people use astrology for like looking at their forecasts and things like that. Do you do that as well?
I do that in a way. I do that by looking at like the energy that's there. One of the things that's in a chart that I think is kind of pretty predictive with people is called the progressed moon. And I think it's a gift. It's because what it does is our moon, our natal moon is where we sit naturally, emotionally. And with yours being in Cancer, yes, you have a heart for people. You have an emotional sense that's there. You also have that little, the shell that's there that's meant to be protective, because you do have that soft heart underneath all of that. And so it's beautiful that that's there. Now, what happens is throughout life, from the time you're born, we have the moon progressing, it's called, and it goes through a sign about every 29 months, a different sign. And so it gives us the gift throughout life of experiencing kind of a little bit of the energetic way of being, how everyone else experiences that side of their heart, that emotional side of being. So when it's going through Aries, you might really feel, ooh, this is like such a different energy. This is fiery. That's kind of about me. I want to do things for me. I want to, stand up for myself. I want to be out there. And you have all these things kind of going on that are very different from how you would normally be. And that's the progressed moon. And certain things tend to happen during those progressed moons that I can kind of say, hey, if you find this happening, then this is why, because this energy is there. Like oftentimes when it's going through Taurus, if it's going through Taurus, I'll see people who really kind of bring a foundational change into their lives, oftentimes in their home. And that can even mean redecorating, or literally I've seen people change houses. I was talking to someone one time and I said, so you have your progressed moons going through Taurus, it says it's happening. And you might be experiencing kind of having a feeling of wanting to change things around your home. She said, oh my gosh, I just started redecorating it. I just started doing construction and changing everything. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And what happens with our progressed moon too is it's asking us, I want you to experience this energy. I want you to feel this energy of going on through this right now. And if we don't, what I've found is super interesting. Your body will start to tell you that you're not moving in the energy you're meant to. So oftentimes if you're in a Gemini progressed moon, if you're not doing the stuff that it's saying, like communicate, have fun, explore all the different things, if you're not doing those, you might start to have some issues with your nerves going on, some anxiety, some things showing up. But when you do then start moving in that direction and bringing those energies into your life, following the urges of your heart, basically, you notice that clears up. It feels good and you're flowing and you're doing those things. So it's really fun to see that happening.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I love that because you're looking at more of the energetics of like, not like specifics, not like, oh, you're going to get married with, 2 kids or any of that stuff. It's like, this is the energy that's to come based on the planets and the moon and the phases and all of that. And then what you do with it is really what creates where you go with it, right? It's kind of, you still have that free will piece.
I might say, hey, this is in an energy, and the way that it's personal for you is in relationship. So this would probably be a real good time if if you're not in a relationship, that it might be that really romantic connection that you're looking for. Move in the energy of that. Put yourself out there, be in that energy. That's the information that I would give to someone, because they do make the choice. There is free will. they can move in that energy, and then it probably is very likely that they're going to meet that person. They're going to meet the, that love. Or they can really kind of not be doing it, not paying attention to things, and then it's way less likely that that's going to happen because you're not moving in the flow of the energy that is being offered to you in that time. So that's kind of, there are people who really do have predictive things out there. I will say it's likely that this can happen during this time because of that free will. It's likely that children could be a big focus in your life during this time period. How you choose to move in that energy, if that means, ooh, that would be a great time to get pregnant, wonderful, do that. That might mean that maybe you already have children and it's about really focusing on them right now. So it can be very different. That's my version of predictive astrology.
Yeah, I'm very similar with my tarot. I actually will specifically say I don't do predictive readings because I could tell you where you're headed as of right now, but I think that that's like a timeline. It's like that's a projected possibility, but it's always changing based on what we choose and we do in the now. So like my readings are more like, this is where you're coming from, this is where you're at, and this is the roadmap that say I feel like Spirit's speaking through me and through the cards, right? So it's like, this is what you're being invited into to help you get where you want to go. And so it sounds really similar. The only difference is you have something that's probably more, I don't know if scientific is the right word. Would you say that astrology is a form of science?
Yeah, it's been around. It's been around for thousands of years, and kings and queens and all that. And it was developed as a science, basically. It wasn't developed as a woo thing. It was developed as a science. And it is very structural, I guess you would say. You're looking at where the planet's sitting, what the influences are around it, what's the, all the different things in conjunction to the chart. And there are some really basic things that you're going to pull from that. And then that's where, like, the intuition that you talk about, that's where you might have the feeling that, oh, that shows up for this person in this way. And you're going to talk about that with the person, or, expand on that a little bit and kind of say, well, I kind of see this energy moving in here. Do you have that happening right now? And they'll say yes or no. And it's like, well, I think maybe that's a door that's going to open for you because I feel like that's something that in that area, according to the chart and the energy, that's where it's going to be. You use cards. I use cards too. Actually, when I do my astrology readings, I always have cards at the end, and so in case people have questions outside of anything that I just gave them, it's so funny because 99.9% of the time, even if they're just read the cards in general to what it is, I lay them out and it's like, ooh, so it basically confirms a lot of the information I just said, because we're working in that same energy, and it's going to give you the information that you need to move forward in the best way possible for you.
100%. I like to say, because some people will ask me, well, how does it work? How do you really pick up on this stuff? And I say it's all about intention. So if someone's coming to you with the intention of, I want to get information about my chart and where I'm going, and you're showing with the intention of being that guiding light for them, you're working on the exact same energy level, the same frequency. So things are able to connect on like a energetic level that we can't see. And so I have the same thing happen all the time. Like someone could be going through something, and I'll do one reading for them, and then they'll ask a question that's different, but like it still kind of ties in, and it'll be same cards or same, very similar in messages, and we'll both laugh about it. So I'm like, well, you're definitely still being asked to focus on this thing because it's very prominent, it's still coming through, or yeah, so that happens all the time. And I love it because it's very confirmative. It's like, this stuff is real. People may not believe it or understand it or see it, but it's a real thing. I did have a question for you. So I'm already a believer in astrology, even though like I've only dabbled in it a little bit. Just from what I've seen, it makes so much sense about just the tip of the iceberg that I've dabbled into myself. And so I don't need to be convinced, but my sister-in-law, she's a twin. And she doesn't believe in this. Like, she's very much like, I don't believe in astrology. And I was like, oh, well, tell me why. And I couldn't really come up with a good explanation for her take on it. And granted, I don't know if she's actually really dived into it any more than just, the horoscopes in the paper. But her and her twin are, they were born on the same day, I believe, very similar times, and she said that her and her brother are like very different, like night and day. And they're both Geminis, which I think is funny, but because there are two sides to a Gemini, right? But and the Geminis are twins. That's actually funny too. But anyways, but she's like, yeah, I don't believe in it because we're exactly opposite, but we're born at the same time and day and all that. So like, how do you explain that? So have you worked with twins, or what is your take on twins?
Yeah, actually, I was just talking with someone the other day about this. I worked with someone and she got in touch with me and said, I'm dating a twin. And we were talking about astrology. She goes, but how can they, how does it work with twins? She didn't even say how could they be so different? And I said, let me guess, they're very different. And she said, yes. I said, here's why. Because astrology, first of all, is not a cookie cutter thing. Often people will say, oh, my sun sign is Gemini. And they either really relate to it or they really don't. And a lot of people who really don't relate to their sun sign are like, oh, that's phooey then, because that doesn't describe me at all. But what you need to know about astrology first and foremost is it's like making a cake. And if you say, ooh, that's my sun sign, it's like, awesome, there's the flour for the cake. You don't have a cake yet, you just have flour. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to taste like anything. It's not going to have any of the nuances. As you add in the other things, that's what creates the cake. That's what creates the flavor of the person that's there. And what's super interesting with twins is exactly something I said a few minutes ago about leaning into the energies of something. So you will probably have, when they're opposite each other, you have one leaning really into certain aspects of the energies in their chart. And it might be different ones, they're leaning into this, away from this, into this, like a little combination lock, that undoes. The other one is leaning in different directions, leaning away from something that's there and into this instead. And so when you're choosing and leaning into the energy of something, you're going to be very different. Gemini both are, it's communication, definitely about communication. So you might have one person that's, yes, absolutely willing to talk, be in that energy, having all the conversation. The other one that is closed mouth and doesn't want to say anything because they're leaning away from that energy. They're like, I don't know about that. And that's their choice, and it's actually meant to be the balance. We're meant to come into balance with all of the things in our chart. Because what's important there too is if you think about the four elements that I talked about as four wheels on a car, if you have one that's all jacked up and puffed up and big, you're going to limp along the road. If you have another one that's flat and not there, you're not going anywhere. So we're meant to engage whatever the balance that we come into the world with. We're meant to engage in those. But if you have one twin really leaning into all this energy up here, pumping up this tire up here, it's going to be an interesting ride. You might have the other person over here who won't lean in at all. And they want to have their individuality away from the other person. So they do lean into a different energy and go like, oh, I don't want to be all talkative. I'm going to be like this. I'm going to lean on this. And that might be there. And that might be who they are. And the mixture of all the other things, depending on what's going on in their chart, makes them different people. If you find two twins that really are kind of finding balance in life, you'll find that they have a lot of similarities, even if they have some nuances that are different. They'll have some big connections of being in the same energy when they're both in a really balanced, good state. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense actually. But again, it's like what you said, it's the energy. When I've read my chart, there are times where I'm like, that doesn't really fit me. Maybe an unhealthier version of me, I would have stepped into that. But you know what I mean? So it was kind of irrelevant at some point, but it's not always relevant, right? It's not all the time. I do like how you pointed out too, how people will say, oh, my sun sign is Gemini or Cancer or whatever, or Virgo. And they're like, they either resonate or they don't. And one thing that I've learned, and what I usually say to that too, when people are like, oh, I don't resonate, I'm always like, well, that's just like the tip of the iceberg, right? They're like, what do
The
you
base
mean?
layer. It's the
Yeah.
base layer.
And I like how you explain it with like a cake. It's the flour. So it's like many of those people who say like, oh, I don't resonate with my sign, like their main sign. I always try and tell them, well, you know that there's so much more in your sign, because then you have your chart. And they're like, what's a chart? Well, you can look it up on Google. I mean, it's, you can at least get a little closer if you're not going to work with someone directly. And so, yeah, I love how you describe that as making a cake though. I like to say tip of the iceberg, but the cake makes more sense. It's like, that's the foundational place. That's where you're starting at, but there's so many more layers. And I could see how just because it's in your chart doesn't mean you're going to immediately like do anything with it. It's just available as a possibility. And with both of them having the option to lean into something or not lean into something, it doesn't mean it's not present. It just means that you're choosing to follow that or not.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is it will be a theme in your life, whatever it is. And people might not see that, but if they look at it as like with the Gemini, it might be the theme of conversation. So are you having a lot of conversation, or are you avoiding a lot of conversation? Do you really like to explore all of the different things out there? Or are you like, I think I need to focus more. I think I need to be in here. So there's going to be a theme of conversation, of focus, of that connection or duality, the connection of duality in your life. Are you flipping from one side to the other, going back and forth, exploring the things? Do you beat yourself up for that? Or do you allow yourself to be that duality, have that duality in life and go, you know what, I can change my mind. I am allowed to play over here and believe this, and then play over here and believe this. Or maybe at a young age, like you being told you're oversensitive, are you told you need to focus, you need to decide, what you're going to do, what you're going to, all these things, you need to come to terms with this, instead of being told you have some great ideas. That would be great for you to just let those pop in and write them down when they come up and see what ideas flow, because Geminis are part of our ideal world. They're out there because they're touching on so many different things, and they can bring the ideas. Sometimes they get told, oh, you're too flighty, you're too this, you don't ground into anything, you need to make it happen instead of just being up in your mind all the time. But we need those people that are up in their mind. They start that creation process, and it's wonderful and amazing, and they bring that into our world in a wonderful way. So we need that with people who have a lot of water, or the water signs, Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio. Scorpio gets a huge bad rap, but the wonderful, beautiful thing about water signs, have you ever seen those pictures where you can see above and below the water, and it's just really beautiful and you can see clearly underwater? Those are our water signs. They see, and especially Scorpio, they see underneath things. They see the flow of life and death and the energy of that in a beautiful, clear way. And they have the emotional wherewithal, like you, to be connected to that beautiful energy. And they try to show the rest of us, look how beautiful our emotional world is, the beauty of it. And most of us are up sitting on the top on a boat, above the water going, it's kind of murky down there. It's a little scary looking. I don't know about that. And so we don't dive deep into the emotional world because we can't see it as clearly. But if we connect with people who do have that water connection and allow that to be seen, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Scorpios are fun because people always say they're so intense. They're so, they're so this, they're so secretive, and they just dig, and they take you with all these questions, and it's like, whoa, because they don't want to have the shallow conversation. They want to dive deep down in there. But think about someone going in that's used to diving, free diving, even naturally in the water, or a porpoise or something, a water animal diving down. They do it naturally, easily. And they're trying to drag one of us who's not a natural water person. It's like, whoa, we need time to adjust. You're going to drown us. And so that's what it feels like for the rest of us out there. I'll say one more thing too about Scorpios. The intensity, and maybe some other water signs feel this too, depending on what their chart looks like. The intensity that Scorpio feels emotion is so different. It's like being at the beach in a wave. You live in California, those waves can get wild, and they will throw you around, and you kind of have to learn how to navigate in them if you don't want to get beat up. You know when to dive under, when to ride it in, when to swim past it, all of those things. The Scorpio person does that. All of that's going on inside of them. They have those big waves that are crashing around inside of them that now they're having to navigate while they're in a conversation with you. All of that is happening underneath. And so sometimes when they're speaking, or they're going to have a little bit of intensity because they've got a lot happening there, and they've learned over the years to navigate that, while the rest of us are over on the lazy river, we're having a good time, going. There might be a few rapids here and there going along, and we're looking at this person going, what's up with them? What's going on? Well, all of that is what's going on. When you can look at someone and understand that, you're going to deal with them in a whole different way and appreciate them in a whole different way. When you can look at someone that has cancer, that they have this beautiful ability to connect at an emotional level because they're meant to, in order to guide us, help us, heal us in so many ways. And when they can tap into that energy in a way that's meaningful and be more of an empath than a sympath, because there's a difference. A sympath is someone who has no control, and they get out into the world and they're like, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do anything. A lot of people say they're too empathic, but what they really are is too sympathetic. An empath manages the energy, taps in for that healing or for that knowledge that they're being asked to help with, and then they pull out and they're able to kind of navigate and be in their own energy. That's what an empath does. And those empathic people heal us, show us love, show us how to care for others in a way that is so unconditional and beautiful, and it's magical. So when we can do that, oh my goodness. And same thing with the fire kids, the fire people out there. Be bold, be interesting, be the pioneer, be the one that speaks up, light the way for the rest of us, because when you're going along in your own fire, you are leaving a path for us to light off of your energy. And we need that. We need that. And the earth, the people who have earth, Taurus, Capricorn, and Virgo, they oftentimes are told, oh my gosh, it's all about make the list, check the list, get the thing done, be the person that's there. Or, for Taurus, the stubborn one that is holding their ground, taking their time, doing it in their own way of being in the world. They're going to be the one that starts the story way back here, way back, like, 2 months ago. I got to give you a little background here. And they're going to start back here and then lead up to the thing that happened yesterday. But they have to have that journey that's there. They want to take their time and tell you about it. But we need that. There are manifestors. They are the people that teach us how to live in the quality of life and how to be the leader. The Capricorn is the leader, the one that shows us get the things done when they're leaning into the energy that is good and right and strong.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
Thank you for sharing about, all of the different elements and the different signs in those and how they all help. And it's so funny that you focus so much on Scorpio because my boyfriend is a Scorpio. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. I like to say with Scorpios, because I never dated a Scorpio before because of the intensity, because of past Scorpios. I was like, oh my God, they're so intense. Because especially I am an empath, so I can feel that intensity. But I'm also learning that Scorpios are really good, like you were saying about managing, they're really good at on the surface being totally calm despite all of the craziness going on inside them and around them. And so in a way, he's also very grounding despite that intensity. So it's so interesting. And he's like the observer. I see him picking up on things that no one else picks up on.
Yeah, they're like detectives. They find all the little small things and then they'll start asking the questions, and then it leads to another one, and they can pull all those little gems out that are deep down in there.
And my daughter is a fire sign. So everything you shared about the fire, she's an Aries.
It
is very much so. It's very much do first, think later. She's very assertive, very outgoing, all the things that I am not naturally, but I have to give her the space to be her because it's just her. And so I will say that knowing astrology does help a lot, especially like understanding where she's coming from and also giving grace to myself when it's not easy for me to always keep up with her. It's because we're just so different. When it comes to astrology and knowing these things about like people in our life, family, friends, partners, kids, does astrology help you like navigate those relationships? Is that a good use of it?
Absolutely. Because when you can understand kind of how the other person sees the world, and if you look at all of the different ways that someone might see something, if you're looking at, when I do a chart, we go in and look at life purpose, life lessons, and kind of see how that integrates into your life. And then from there, and I got to say real quick to like your sister-in-law, that would nail it probably right there for her in terms of kind of believing in astrology, because I could tell her at this point in your life, you had this really big switch, this really big change happen. Everyone goes, oh yeah, my life fell apart, or I had a baby, or I got married, or some big thing that happened, big turning point in life at this particular time. And I always start with that to kind of anchor in, yes, this is a real thing. Yes, we're going to be talking in reality here, not in woo-woo world. But I go through all of the different things. And when we're talking about Mercury, and there, Mercury is all about the mind. So we talk about, this is how your energy in the world, maybe your mind is in Sagittarius, a fire sign, and really need to be exploring and moving into all of the different philosophies and kind of creating your own, but seeing the world as that bigger picture of things. And when you can look at someone and go, oh yeah, that's the way your mind works. And then you look at the person that's not again, taking into account all of the other things in there so that you can see the whole person and the nuances there. What's might be a really big influence, what might sneak in as a little bit of a hint of an influence in there. And then you look at their mate or their child and you say, you know what? Their mind is so different. Their mind swims in Pisces, and it's a flowy thing that goes back and forth. And they love being in the mystical, magical things. And they might struggle coming back to reality sometimes, or struggle with trying to really get things done and think about and answer quickly. You might have to give them a little time to respond, because that's how their mind is going. If you're expecting someone in your life because you think, I want to talk about it, I want to talk about it, I want to talk about it, and that they should be talking about it too, when their mind is going, I need to think about it right now. I need to let it flow through my brain for a little bit. You're going to get a difficult reaction. But if you can go, I need to talk about this, and yet I understand that you need a little time to ruminate on it, to think about it. Can we come back in a little bit and have that conversation? Because I do really need to talk about it. You're not attacking the other person because they can't talk to you about it right now, or they won't. You're bringing the compromise, the balance into it, because you're aware that the other person is dealing with it in a certain way. They might have a heart that reacts instantly in terms of where you would be the caretaker. Let's take care of this situation. Let's be here. We've got to, take care of this person emotionally. Another person who has a Virgo in their heart, the moon's in Virgo, they would be like, no, we have to be practical. We have to do this right now to care for this. What's practical that we can do in this situation to make this better? Because that's what makes them feel better. So to be practical and of use is incredibly important at that point for them, where you're just like, I have such a heart. I need to be in there. I need to, you might have another way of doing it. I just need to tap into the energy and feel for them and see how I can help in the healing process. Where the other person is, I think we need to set up an appointment for this or this. Very different energies in how we do it. But if you can understand, okay, you think of a practical thing, I'm going to think of how I can do this. Let's see where we can come together in the middle with that, where the emotional side is going to be taken care of along with that practical point. And then you blend those together and bring that in the best way possible.
That is a really great example, because we all are individuals, and I think it helps, instead of trying to navigate and figure out and guesswork what or how they might show up in the world. The astrology is kind of almost like a cheat sheet in a way, where it helps you, and like, oh, okay. So instead of trying to figure out why you're doing things differently, I'm going to have a better understanding of how you do things, so that way I can show up and meet you there, and vice versa. So I love that. That's so cool. Makes me want to go and look at some more charts again. As far as like everything you do, because I know we've talked a lot about astrology, but you're also a hypnotist, you're an NLP practitioner, mindset mentor. And I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast yet or if it was before I pressed record, but you would also mention that in all of that, you see yourself as a mentor. Like that's kind of the common denominator among all of it. Would you say that being a mentor is what your purpose is here? Like, do you feel like you found your purpose in mentorship?
Yes, my and part of my purpose is mentoring, and in terms of kind of being that bridging the two sides of things to be able to really blend the practical and the woo together, that is in a useful way for people, and to show people that that's possible and important to being that whole version of yourself in this world. Because when you're leaning one way or the other, the scales are not going to bring you into that best version of flow for you. But when you can bring those into flow, and nothing's ever going to be perfectly balanced. We're going to have one day where we're more woo. We're going to have one day where we need to get stuff done. And so, the more that we can kind of swim between the two and allow that flow, kind of like the infinity sign, moving through that, the more we're able to move in our own purpose, and the more we're able to make it available, make ourselves and our purpose available to the world that we live in. It might mean that you are going to lean a little bit more into the mystical, magical side of things. And maybe those are the people you're going to reach easily. But it might be through the means of communication. It might be through the means of caretaking. It might be, through being a teacher. Whatever it is, you're able to look at the connections in your chart and see that. I think that we all do have that path and that energy that we're meant to bring into the world. You can have the same placement a little bit, on a chart, but because of some of the other influences in you, that purpose is going to come out in you a little bit differently. So maybe your purpose is communication, but maybe that communication is through blogging, through teaching, through being an interpreter. It can vary, but yes, we all have the energy of that purpose in our life to be moving in. And I think that is part of mine, is to say, hey, I have traveled this path and gone back and forth and back and forth. And now I have an easier way if you want to let me help you to change your life and get there a little bit easier.
I love that. So mentorship is part of it, but it's really you're like the bridge between like the left and the right brain, right? You're the bridge between the two sides and help people find that balance. And I love that. So what is it about bridging people between those two things that really lights you up?
I think when they find that connection, and it's also, for the bridge analogy, it is taking you from where you are to where you want to be. And through that whole process, adding in the practical, the woo, the things, because we live in a wonderful, magical world. Absolutely. We also live in a world where you have to be doing the things that you need to be doing and navigating the world that we're in. And the wonderful thing, I love using puppy and dog analogies. One of the things about the universe that is so key is, like, if you've ever had I sometimes have well-trained animals, but if you've ever had like a well-trained dog, or you've seen someone walk that dog, and when they stop, the dog stops. When they go, the dog goes. It might travel off and go over here and sniff around and do all these wonderful things and then come back. That's what happens with the universe and in the magic of kind of the energy of the woo and the practical. I hear so many people so many times say, I'm waiting for inspiration. I'm waiting for the next step. I kind of need a sign of what's going on so that I can move forward. And I tell them, hey, while you're sitting there waiting, the universe is sitting right next to you, waiting too, just like that dog. It's not going anywhere until you start moving forward. And it doesn't matter if you start moving forward in the wrong direction. It will course correct you to where you need to go. But when you stop, the universe stops. And when you're in motion, think about that dog. That dog can run a lot faster than you, go in a lot of other directions and bring back some wonderful prizes for you. But you're in control of the motion. And so that's a very practical thing to be aware of. Now, that motion, that action, can be important or not so important, inspired or not. And that's where that energetic part comes in, where you're tapping into your intuition, you're tapping into your natural gifts, you're tapping into that energy that says, all right, everything's here. What do you want? Waiting, just like that dog, you're going to throw the ball, and that dog's going to bring back everything with it, all of the things, like, here you go, happy and excited to continue on and bring the information that you're looking for, bring the inspiration, bring the people into your life that are going to take you through your next step. And that's the magic of being that bridge, is all of a sudden they get to go, oh my goodness, this is incredible. I have this whole new way of looking at life. It's like hitting a reset button, moving forward, and doing it without all of the internal conflicts that we've battled for so long in our lives.
You get to be part of them basically waking up. You get to see them go from kind of sleepwalking and feeling like life's out of their control to like, oh wait, no, I could take action, and it's actually going to do something positive for me, but do it consciously and mindfully. And that's where that magic is. Oh my gosh, I love that. So from here, I'd love to shift into what I like to call synchronicity story time, because I love stories of synchronicity, and especially with the work that you do, of all the areas that you have worked on. I mean, I'm sure you have synchronicity stories, at least one of those areas that you work on where, either some kind of paranormal story, or you can't explain it, or it feels like the universe gave you some breadcrumbs that later on you're like, oh my God, how did this all fall into place? Do you have any stories like that you could share?
I knew you were going to ask me this, and I was like, oh yeah, synchronicity happen all the time. Oh my goodness, I love that they happen. Like with finding kind of the astrology journey, I set an intention of, wow, I want to really kind of move into a direction that is going to be meaningful. And I was playing with cards and I was doing the intuitive work and exploring kind of some of the different paths, but I didn't really have a way of going. I thought, well, okay, I'm going to do this. And so it kept saying, stick with this one person, stick with this one person. And so through that, I'm like, okay, all right. So I explored more. And through that, she happened to have a guest on one time who was this astrologer. And I listened to her and I'm like, she doesn't really sound like any astrologer I've ever heard before. And I thought, oh, cool. And so I started following her. And it happened to be just at the right time because she had just started. She was getting ready to open her academy. And so she was offering people scholarships to come in and do that. And so I was able to apply and go into the scholarship and actually continue on a scholarship into like the next level program and really kind of focus in. I was invited in to do that. So it was so cool how it kind of just flowed along, where I didn't know what was coming. I had no idea what was there and what was going to happen. And it really has led me into such an understanding of so many things and opened up the doors in so many ways. But I had this other fun one. I forgot about this. This is what I was going to share with you. At one point, I don't put this out there that much right now. I'm just starting to. I've been studying mediumship. And so at one point I started, and you know how you can kind of start digging into different things and you're like, oh, that would be fun. That would be fun. That would be fun. But it's like, well, where do I concentrate my energy? And so I was dipping kind of in and out of mediumship. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to dive into yet another skill or another something, because I don't even know if that's the right direction for me. And at the time, I worked in corporate for like 23 years. And at the time I was in that, but my corporate job, actually, I drove all over the place out in different areas. And I happened to be in the back country somewhere. And I was so frustrated this day, so frustrated. And I said, and I'm basically yelling at the universe, my guides, whoever will be listening, driving around in this truck out in the back country. I don't need yet another little side road to go down for the heck of it. I need to know what I need to focus on, where I need to go. And I said, look, I need a sign, an absolute sign. I have to have a sign. If I'm supposed to go forward with this, you are going to have to make it blatantly apparent to me, because that's just the only thing that's going to do it for me. And I said, so I want to see a moose. I want you to show me a moose, which is doable in my part of the country. It's not everyday thing, but it's very doable. And I was in an area where it was absolutely could happen. I'd seen them back there before. And so I was like, fine, do you want me to do anything with this? And I mean, I was kind of cranky about it. I'm like, if you want me to do anything about this, you have to show me a moose. And so then I'm like, go, and I drove on, and I kind of got past my little temper tantrum, and I still thinking about it, going through the day, but I pulled out and I took a break for a few minutes, gathered my breath, kind of calmed down. I'd gotten out of that place a little bit and was stopping before I was moving on to somewhere else. And as we do, I got on my phone and I came across something, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, and so I kind of kept going, went to the little page that it was a part of, and up pops this big picture of a moose, big Bullwinkle moose. And I laughed because on it said, don't take yourself so seriously. And I was like, oh my goodness. All right. Okay. So that led me into stepping into training in that particular area. But it's just so funny because sometimes those synchronicities make you laugh because they're just so unexpected in ways that you can't even imagine that it would show up, especially with those words. So I had to laugh at that. And I have a little picture of a moose up in one of my areas to remind me to not take myself so seriously and go along with whatever it is that I need to be doing, and it's going to be okay. So that was a fun little synchronicity.
That's awesome. That is so cool. Yeah, I love that when we especially when you are kind of direct and you're like, I had that happen recently, kind of similarly I was seeing 222 when I first started dating my boyfriend. We've been dating now for almost 6 months, but when the beginning, I was seeing 222 everywhere, all day long. And I was like, what the heck is up with 222? And I mean, I do my day job when I'm not doing like my business or podcasting, I do DoorDash deliveries. So I'm on the road a lot. And I'm like, of course, the apartment of delivery is apartment 222. And of course, I want to look at my phone, right? It's as it says 2:22 p.m. And, just all day long, I'm like, what the heck? License plate numbers. It was just all day long and for a few months straight. So it was kind of like, I feel like it was speaking to different things in my life, but I do think he was included in that just because he was such a new thing and that was such a new thing. And then I stopped seeing it for a while. And then fast forward, I have some from my own past stuff. I haven't been in a relationship in a while. So this is like bringing up some old triggers and insecurities and things like that. And how I met him was very synchronistic. So I kind of trusted, like, okay, this is all meant to be, all this stuff. Well, I was kind of in my own insecurities in my head, standing in a gas station. And I'm like, I need a sign. I need to know that I'm still on the right path. This is still good. It wasn't like I had any good reason not for it not to be. I knew I was just in my head. I knew I just needed something to ground me specifically. And I was like, I need something to ground me. I need proof from higher power that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Within 2 minutes of this mini conversation in my head, and so I'm standing in line at a gas station, I go to pay for my gas and I paid cash, but I was short some change or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, so you still owe $2.22. I was like, okay, thank you. It was so like, ask and you shall receive, right?
There you go. There you go.
All right. Okay. I hear you. I want to get out of my head. Just me being insecure. I get it. In fact, kind of ironic, speaking of astrology, my Chiron is basically, I don't remember what it is exactly, but what I read about my Chiron, it's all about relationships and learning how to be in relationships. It's all about basically like, you need to learn how to like be on your own, but also learn how to be vulnerable in relationships. So there you go. I was like, okay, I get it. I hear you. So I know we touched on it a little bit, which first of all, thank you for sharing those 2 stories. Those were so cool and definitely like showing how just asking for signs or following the breadcrumbs. Your first story was really all about following the breadcrumbs. You were getting this intuitive download, like stick with it. You didn't know why, but you were like, okay. And then it led you to finding your professional astrology, right? And then the other one was more like ask and you shall receive. So you kind of showcased 2 different kinds of synchronicities. I love that. So I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but the last question I always ask, do you believe that we all have a purpose? And so do you believe that like every single one of us have a reason that we're here on this earth?
Yes, I do. Even if it's just as an observer and to be, the quiet one in the back that documents the things or tells the story or observes in this lifetime what it's like to be among all of these other people and all of these other versions. And whether you believe in past lives or not or anything like that, it might be that you're living a very different life than you were last time. And the purpose is to just relax and chill out in this lifetime. Or your purpose might be to be the intense one and be the driver of a change in this world. It might be to be the mom of this person and do that for this lifetime. It might mean to be the adventurer that goes to the Arctic and just stands at the top of the world, and sees all of the colors and all of that, and to feel the connection that you get. We all have a purpose because we're all connected. We're all a part of this journey. We're all a part of the energy that creates this world that is here. And whether that purpose is it can just have the millions of different versions that there is millions of different people. So your purpose is going to be whatever it is that you want to direct your energy into. Are you going to have some guidelines for that? You absolutely have some guidelines for that are going to support you in living in that purpose. And if you tap in and look at those, it's going to be so much easier. For the people who are lost, who don't know their purpose, who are stuck, who all are feeling like, I don't feel like I have a purpose in this life, I'm just floating around. Go look at that, because when you can look and come into an awareness of something, again, it puts you in motion to doing something, to coming into another awareness, to opening another door, to finding maybe somewhere down the line, maybe it takes a couple doors for you to open, the information that is going to light you up in this lifetime, or going to change whatever situation it is that allows you to go, okay, well, maybe I am just meant to experience all the gambit of emotion in here, but maybe that means I can show someone else how you can live with all of those emotions in this lifetime. That might be your purpose.
But I love that. And what you just touched on too is my definition of purpose is it's really about finding what lights you up and then giving back in the world in some way. And so it's like taking, like you said, there's so many different ways that you can find your purpose and things that you can love, but it's what you do with it and and then I think living intentionally is a big part of it, because some people are living their purpose and they're not even aware of it. They're just like sleepwalking. So, or they're so close to their purpose. In my readings, when I give readings, there are so many times I have a specific card I call the purpose card. Whenever it comes up, I'm like, your purpose is orbiting you. It's trying to connect with you. And so I'm always trying to like get them to kind of open their eyes a little bit. Like it's you're being invited into it. So either it's something you've found and you haven't leaned into it yet, or it's something that you're not awake yet to, but it's trying to connect with you. But I love that. And I agree 100%. So I've really loved our conversation, Laura. This has just been so interesting. I love astrology. So learning like from an astrologist directly instead of Googling it has been, so great, because you're just full of so much information and also perspective, because, there's so much different takes on it. And I really just love kind of picking your brain and learning more about it. Thank you so much for being here. How can listeners find you if they want to work with you, either as an astrologist or any of the other number of things that you do?
They can find me under my name. It's Laura Ordile. It looks like Ordile. It's LauraOrdile. And it's lauraordile.com. Or they can find me under my name on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. And I also have a podcast called The Change Gang that they can go have a listen to, and that has a lot of different information on it. And as well as the Change Gang group. It's a free group that I have on Facebook. So you can find me at any of those.
Perfect. I will be sure to put that in the show notes. They can find you a little bit easier. And yeah, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you. I had fun.
Me too. This was awesome.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you're wanting more, consider joining our free Facebook community called Spirit Journey Collective, your haven for spiritual exploration and personal growth. Dive into a supportive community where sharing spiritual experiences is encouraged. Unlock the power of intuition, embark on a journey of self-discovery, and connect with like-minded souls. If this sounds like a community you'd love to plug into, the link is in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.